Welcome to One Book, One Coffee. You know, the fact that you're here, choosing to spend time with Wherever You Go, There You Are by Jon Kabat-Zinn, says something remarkable about you. While millions are scrolling through endless feeds or binge-watching their nights away, you've made a different choice. You've decided to invest in understanding mindfulness, in exploring what it means to be truly present in your own life. That's not ordinary, that's extraordinary. This book isn't just another self-help title gathering dust on bestseller lists. It's the work that brought ancient Buddhist meditation practices into modern Western medicine and psychology. When Jon Kabat-Zinn published this in 1994, he fundamentally changed how we think about stress, healing, and human consciousness. The book has been endorsed by everyone from Oprah Winfrey to Daniel Goleman, the emotional intelligence expert, who called it a masterpiece. It's required reading in medical schools, used in hospitals worldwide, and has helped millions discover that the peace they're searching for isn't somewhere else. It's right here, right now. Kabat-Zinn himself came to this work through his own journey. A molecular biologist by training, he was working at MIT when he had a profound realization during a meditation retreat in 1979. He saw that the ancient wisdom of mindfulness could be stripped of religious context and applied scientifically to help people suffering from chronic pain, stress, and illness. This insight led him to found the Stress Reduction Clinic at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center, where he developed the now famous mindfulness-based stress reduction program. Now, a quick note before we dive in. This is a detailed chapter-by-chapter walkthrough, so it's going to be a longer session. Take your time with it. There's no rush. If you need to step away, save this video to your watch later or forward the link to yourself on WhatsApp so you can pick up right where you left off. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's walk through this transformative book together chapter by chapter, insight by insight. Let's begin. The revolutionary guide that brought ancient mindfulness into modern life, showing millions that the peace they seek isn't somewhere else. It's right where they are. Jon Kabat-Zinn was a molecular biologist at MIT when a single moment of clarity during a meditation retreat in 1979 changed everything. He realized that ancient mindfulness practices could be scientifically applied to help people heal from chronic pain and stress, leading him to create the world-renowned mindfulness-based stress reduction program. Picture this. You're sitting in your favorite coffee shop, scrolling through your phone, when suddenly you realize you've been reading the same sentence 3 times without actually absorbing a single word. Your mind was somewhere else entirely, maybe replaying yesterday's awkward conversation or rehearsing tomorrow's presentation. Sound familiar? Well, my friend, you've just experienced the opposite of what Jon Kabat-Zinn calls mindfulness, and understanding this difference might just change how you experience every moment of your life. So what exactly is mindfulness? Now, before you roll your eyes thinking this is just another wellness buzzword that belongs on a motivational poster next to a sunset, let me tell you something that might surprise you. Kabat-Zinn's definition is deceptively simple yet profoundly radical. Mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and without judgment. That's it. But here's the thing, this simple concept is actually revolutionary in ways that most of us don't immediately grasp. Think about this for a moment. When was the last time you truly paid attention to just one thing? I mean really paid attention, without your mind wandering off to your grocery list or that text message you forgot to answer. In our hyper-connected world, we've become masters of distraction, champions of multitasking, and experts at being anywhere but where we actually are. We eat lunch while checking emails, we walk while texting, we even shower while planning our day. We've turned presence into a lost art. But here's where it gets interesting. Kabat-Zinn isn't just talking about focus, though that's part of it. He's talking about a specific quality of attention that's both gentle and fierce, curious and accepting. It's like being a scientist of your own experience, observing what's happening in your mind and body without immediately trying to fix, change, or escape from it. Imagine watching clouds pass across the sky. You don't judge them or try to make them different. You simply notice them as they are. Now, here's the radical part that most people miss. This isn't about emptying your mind or achieving some blissful state of Zen. That's a common misconception that keeps people from even trying. Mindfulness isn't about having a quiet mind. It's about having a different relationship with whatever mind you have, whether it's chattering away like a caffeinated squirrel or feeling as heavy as a storm cloud. The revolution happens when you realize you don't have to be hijacked by every thought or emotion that passes through your awareness. Let me share something that perfectly illustrates this. Kabat-Zinn often tells the story of patients in his stress reduction clinic who initially came seeking relief from chronic pain, anxiety, or illness. What they discovered wasn't a magical cure, but something perhaps even more powerful: the ability to be present with their experience without adding layers of resistance, story, and suffering on top of what was already challenging. One patient described it as the difference between being caught in a riptide and learning to float. The water is still the same, but your relationship to it transforms everything. Consider how this applies to our daily lives. When you're stuck in traffic, your natural response might be frustration, impatience, maybe some colorful language directed at other drivers. But what if, instead of being swept away by that emotional storm, you could simply notice it? There's frustration arising. There's the tightness in my chest, the clenched jaw, the stream of irritated thoughts. Suddenly, you're not drowning in the experience, you're observing it with a kind of spacious awareness. This shift from being lost in our experience to being aware of our experience is what makes mindfulness so transformative. It's like stepping out of a movie you've been completely absorbed in and suddenly remembering you're sitting in a theater. The movie is still playing, but you're no longer completely identified with it. What makes this particularly relevant in our modern world is how our technology and culture seem designed to fragment our attention. We're constantly being pulled away from the present moment by notifications, worries about the future, and regrets about the past. We've created lives where being fully present has become almost countercultural. In this context, the simple act of paying attention becomes a radical act of rebellion. But here's the beautiful paradox that Kabat-Zinn illuminates. When we stop trying to escape the present moment and instead learn to inhabit it fully, we often discover that it contains everything we've been seeking elsewhere. Peace isn't something we need to achieve. It's something we can uncover by learning to be with what is, right here, right now. As we dive deeper into this exploration of mindfulness throughout our time together, remember that this isn't about perfection or becoming a different person. It's about awakening to the person you already are and the life that's already unfolding, one mindful moment at a time. Picture this. You're sitting at your kitchen table with your morning coffee, and suddenly you realize you've been drinking it for 10 minutes without actually tasting a single sip. Your mind was somewhere else entirely, maybe replaying yesterday's awkward conversation or rehearsing tomorrow's presentation. Sound familiar? This is exactly what Jon Kabat-Zinn means when he talks about missing our lives while we're living them. In this profound section of Wherever You Go, There You Are, Kabat-Zinn introduces us to perhaps the most revolutionary yet simple concept in all of mindfulness: the power of now. Not tomorrow's possibilities, not yesterday's regrets, but this moment right here, right now, where life is actually unfolding. Now think about this for a moment. When was the last time you were fully present for anything? I mean really present, not just physically there, but mentally, emotionally, completely engaged. Kabat-Zinn suggests that most of us spend our days like sleepwalkers, going through the motions while our consciousness floats somewhere between past and future, rarely landing in the only place where life actually exists. He tells the story of a woman who came to one of his mindfulness workshops completely frazzled. She'd been rushing from meeting to meeting, checking her phone constantly, her mind spinning with endless to-do lists. During a simple breathing exercise, she suddenly burst into tears. When asked what happened, she said, "I just realized I haven't taken a real breath in months." This wasn't metaphorical. She literally hadn't been aware of her breathing, one of the most fundamental acts of being alive. This is what Kabat-Zinn calls our default mode, living on autopilot. We drive familiar routes without remembering the journey. We eat meals while scrolling through our phones, barely registering the flavors. We have conversations while mentally composing grocery lists. It's as if we're constantly living in a parallel universe, one step removed from our actual experience. But here's where it gets fascinating. Kabat-Zinn explains that the present moment isn't just where life happens to occur, it's the only place where we have any real power. Think about it. Can you change the past? Obviously not. Can you control the future? Not really, despite our illusions of control. The only moment where you can make choices, where you can respond rather than react, where you can actually influence your life is right now. He uses a beautiful analogy of surfing. A surfer doesn't spend time on the wave thinking about the last wave they missed or the next wave that might come. They're completely absorbed in riding the wave they're on, balanced in the eternal now of that experience. This is what mindful living looks like, riding the wave of the present moment with full awareness and engagement. Kabat-Zinn shares another powerful story about a man who discovered he had a serious illness. Initially, this news sent him spiraling into anxiety about the future and regret about the past. But through mindfulness practice, he learned to find moments of peace and even joy within his current experience. He noticed how the morning light fell across his hospital bed, how his daughter's hand felt in his, how his breath moved in and out of his body. These weren't grand gestures or life-changing revelations. They were simple moments of presence that transformed his relationship with his circumstances. This connects beautifully to our modern digital age, doesn't it? We're more distracted than ever, constantly pulled away from the present by notifications, alerts, and the endless stream of information. Kabat-Zinn was writing before smartphones, but his insights feel almost prophetic now. He understood that our minds are naturally inclined to wander, but technology has amplified this tendency exponentially. The beauty of focusing on the present moment isn't about achieving some blissful state of constant happiness. Kabat-Zinn is clear about this. The present moment might contain pain, sadness, or difficulty. The power isn't in the content of the moment, but in our relationship to it. When we're fully present, even with challenging emotions or circumstances, we stop adding the extra layer of suffering that comes from resistance and mental commentary. He describes it like this. Imagine you're caught in the rain. You can spend your time cursing the weather, worrying about your hair, thinking about how this will make you late, adding mental and emotional suffering to the simple physical fact of getting wet. Or you can feel the rain on your skin, notice how it sounds, perhaps even find some unexpected beauty in the experience. The rain is the same either way, but your relationship to it transforms everything. As we wrap up this exploration of the present moment's power, remember that this isn't about perfection or constant awareness. It's about returning, again and again, to the simple recognition that this moment, with all its imperfections and possibilities, is where your life is actually happening. And in that recognition lies a freedom that no amount of planning or reminiscing can provide. Picture this. You're sitting across from me with your favorite mug in hand, steam rising between us, and I'm about to shatter some of your biggest assumptions about meditation. Because if there's one thing Jon Kabat-Zinn wants you to understand right from the start, it's that meditation is probably nothing like what you think it is. You know that voice in your head right now, the one that's already jumping ahead, maybe thinking, "Oh great, another person telling me I need to empty my mind and sit like a pretzel for hours." Well, here's the beautiful irony that Kabat-Zinn reveals. That very voice, that constant mental chatter, isn't something you need to eliminate. It's actually the perfect starting point for understanding what meditation truly is. Most of us approach meditation like we're trying to fix a broken radio. We think the goal is to find that perfect frequency where everything goes quiet, where thoughts disappear, and we float in some blissful state of nothingness. But Kabat-Zinn turns this entire notion on its head. Meditation isn't about stopping thoughts any more than breathing is about stopping your heart. Think about it this way. Have you ever tried really hard not to think about a pink elephant? What happens? Suddenly your mind is flooded with pink elephants doing circus tricks, wearing tutus, maybe even tap dancing. The real revelation here is beautifully simple yet profound. Meditation is about awareness itself. It's about becoming intimate with the present moment, exactly as it is, without trying to change it, fix it, or escape from it. Imagine you're sitting by a river, watching the water flow. You don't jump in and try to stop the current or redirect it. You simply observe. Your thoughts are like that river, constantly flowing, and meditation is the practice of sitting by the riverbank of your own consciousness. Now, here's where it gets really interesting for those of us living in our hyperconnected, always-on world. We've been conditioned to believe that productivity means doing something, achieving something, getting somewhere. But meditation is radically different. It's what Kabat-Zinn calls non-doing. This doesn't mean being lazy or passive. It means learning to be fully present without an agenda, without trying to manufacture a particular experience or outcome. Consider how this plays out in our daily lives. You're stuck in traffic, and immediately your mind starts spinning stories. I'm going to be late. This always happens to me. I should have left earlier. But what if, instead of getting caught up in that mental drama, you could simply notice it? What if you could observe your frustration the way you might watch clouds forming in the sky? Interesting but not personal, temporary but not permanent. Kabat-Zinn shares this fascinating insight about our relationship with thinking. We've become so identified with our thoughts that we forget we're not actually our thoughts. It's like being so absorbed in a movie that we forget we're sitting in a theater. Meditation helps us remember that we're the awareness in which thoughts arise and pass away, not the thoughts themselves. This shift in perspective is absolutely revolutionary because it means you don't have to believe every story your mind tells you. Here's a perfect modern example. Think about how you use your smartphone. You probably check it dozens of times a day, often without even realizing it. Your hand reaches for it automatically when there's a moment of stillness or boredom. This habitual reaching is exactly like how our minds habitually reach for thoughts, judgments, and mental commentary. Meditation teaches us to notice this reaching without automatically following through. The beauty of this understanding is that it makes meditation accessible to everyone. You don't need special cushions, perfect posture, or hours of free time. You don't need to achieve some mystical state or have profound spiritual experiences. You simply need to show up to your own life with curiosity and kindness. Whether you're washing dishes, walking to work, or yes, sitting quietly with your eyes closed, the invitation is the same. Can you be present for this moment exactly as it is? What makes this approach so powerful is that it works with our humanity rather than against it. When your mind wanders during meditation, which it absolutely will, that's not a failure. It's actually the moment of awakening, the moment you notice you've been lost in thought. That noticing is the meditation. It's like finding your way back home after realizing you've been walking in the wrong direction. As we settle deeper into this understanding, we begin to see that meditation isn't separate from life. It is life, lived with full awareness and presence. And that realization opens up possibilities we never imagined, which brings us naturally to exploring how this ancient practice can transform our relationship with stress, pain, and the countless challenges of modern living. Picture this. You've just settled into your favorite coffee shop, and your friend across the table leans in with that look of genuine curiosity and says, "Okay, I get that mindfulness sounds amazing, but how do I actually do it?" That's exactly where Jon Kabat-Zinn meets us in this foundational chapter of Wherever You Go, There You Are. He's not interested in mystical theories or ancient Sanskrit terms that make your head spin. Instead, he's rolling up his sleeves, and showing us the nuts and bolts of meditation practice with the warmth of someone who's been walking this path for decades. Think about learning to ride a bicycle for a moment. Remember how overwhelming it seemed at first. All those moving parts to coordinate, the balance, the steering, the pedaling. But your parent or friend didn't hand you a physics textbook about gyroscopic motion and friction coefficients. They simply said, "Hop on, I'll hold the back of the seat and just start pedaling." That's precisely Kabat-Zinn's approach to meditation. He strips away the intimidating mystique and gets right to the heart of it, sitting down, breathing, and paying attention. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is something that might surprise you. Kabat-Zinn emphasizes that meditation isn't about emptying your mind or achieving some blissful state of mental vacuum. That's like expecting to learn guitar by never touching the strings because you're afraid of hitting a wrong note. Instead, he describes meditation as becoming intimate with the constant chatter of your mind, learning to observe it without getting swept away by every thought that crosses your mental stage. He shares this beautiful analogy about thoughts being like clouds passing through the sky of your awareness. Now, think about this for a moment. When you look up at clouds, do you chase after them? Do you get angry when they change shape or disappear? Of course not. You simply watch them drift by, sometimes noticing their patterns, sometimes just enjoying their presence. This is exactly how we learn to relate to our thoughts during meditation. They're not problems to be solved or enemies to be defeated. They're simply phenomena arising and passing away in the vast space of consciousness. The practical foundation that Kabat-Zinn lays out is refreshingly simple, yet profound in its implications. He suggests starting with just paying attention to your breath, not because breathing is magical, but because it's always available, always happening, and always anchored in the present moment. It's like having a reliable friend who's always there when you need them. Your breath doesn't judge you for having a chaotic day or praise you for being calm. It simply is, breath after breath, moment after moment. What makes this approach so relevant to our modern world is how Kabat-Zinn addresses the elephant in the room that every beginning meditator faces: the myth of the good meditation session. You know that feeling when you sit down to meditate and your mind immediately starts planning your grocery list, replaying yesterday's awkward conversation, or composing angry emails to your internet provider. Kabat-Zinn gently reminds us that noticing your mind has wandered isn't a failure. It's actually the moment of awakening, the moment when mindfulness kicks in. He tells the story of a student who came to him frustrated, claiming she was terrible at meditation because her mind was all over the place. Kabat-Zinn's response was brilliant. He congratulated her on her excellent awareness. She wasn't failing at meditation. She was succeeding at noticing what her mind was actually doing, probably for the first time in her life. It's like finally looking in a mirror and seeing yourself clearly instead of walking around with spinach in your teeth, blissfully unaware. The beauty of this practical foundation is how it translates into daily life. Kabat-Zinn isn't asking us to become monks sitting in caves for decades. He's showing us how the same quality of attention we cultivate while watching our breath can transform mundane activities into opportunities for presence. Washing dishes becomes a meditation on the warmth of water and the texture of soap. Walking to your car becomes a chance to feel your feet touching the ground and notice the quality of light around you. This isn't about adding another item to your already overwhelming to-do list. It's about discovering that the life you're already living is rich with opportunities for awakening, if only you learn how to pay attention. As we move forward in exploring Kabat-Zinn's wisdom, remember that every master was once a beginner, and every moment offers a fresh chance to begin again. The foundation is simple. Sit down, breathe, and notice what's actually happening right now. Everything else builds from there, one breath, one moment, one gentle return of attention at a time. Picture yourself sitting in your favorite coffee shop, watching the steam rise from your cup in gentle, rhythmic spirals. There's something almost hypnotic about it, isn't there? That steady, predictable dance of vapor that somehow draws your attention and calms your mind. Well, my friend, what if I told you that you carry something even more powerful than that steam with you everywhere you go? Something that's been your most faithful companion since the moment you were born, yet something you probably take completely for granted. I'm talking about your breath. Jon Kabat-Zinn opens this beautiful exploration by inviting us to consider something extraordinary about the ordinary act of breathing. Here's a fascinating thought. Right now, as you're listening to these words, you're breathing. You didn't have to think about it, plan it, or schedule it into your day. It's simply happening, this miraculous exchange of life-giving oxygen and the release of what you no longer need. And yet, when was the last time you actually paid attention to it? Kabat-Zinn suggests that our breath is like having a personal anchor that we can drop into the present moment whenever the storms of life threaten to sweep us away. Think about this for a moment. When you're anxious about tomorrow's presentation, where is your mind? When you're replaying that awkward conversation from last week, where are you living? Certainly not in the here and now. But your breath, your breath is always happening in this exact moment. It's never breathing yesterday's air or tomorrow's possibilities. It's purely, completely present. The author shares a powerful insight about why breath works so beautifully as what he calls our gateway to presence. Unlike our thoughts, which can be slippery and chaotic, like trying to catch smoke with our bare hands, our breath has substance. We can feel it moving in and out, cool as it enters through our nostrils, warm as it leaves our body. We can sense the gentle rise and fall of our chest, the subtle expansion and contraction of our belly. It's tangible, reliable, and always available for a return visit to the present moment. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Kabat-Zinn tells us about a patient of his, a high-powered executive who came to his stress reduction clinic feeling like she was drowning in her own life. She described her days as an endless series of meetings, phone calls, emails, and deadlines, each one pulling her attention in a different direction until she felt scattered like leaves in a windstorm. Sound familiar? In our age of smartphones and constant connectivity, don't we all sometimes feel like we're living in a perpetual state of divided attention? But something remarkable happened when this woman learned to use her breath as an anchor. She discovered that even in the middle of a tense board meeting, she could take 3 conscious breaths and find her center again. Even while stuck in traffic, instead of letting road rage consume her, she could focus on her breathing and arrive at her destination feeling calm rather than frazzled. The breath became her secret superpower, her way of stepping out of the chaos and into a space of clarity and peace. Here's what's so beautiful about this practice. It requires no special equipment, no membership fees, no apps to download. Your breath is the most democratic form of meditation imaginable. Whether you're a CEO or a student, whether you're sitting in a monastery or standing in line at the grocery store, your breath is there, ready to serve as your pathway back to presence. Kabat-Zinn also addresses something many of us experience when we first start paying attention to our breathing. Sometimes, the moment we focus on it, it can feel forced or unnatural, like suddenly becoming aware that you're walking and then feeling clumsy about each step. He reassures us that this is completely normal. The key isn't to control the breath, but simply to observe it, to become curious about it. What does it feel like today? Is it shallow or deep, fast or slow? There's no right or wrong way to breathe in this practice, only the gentle invitation to notice what's already happening. Think about how revolutionary this is in a world that constantly demands we be somewhere else, do something more, achieve something greater. Here's a practice that says, what if, just for this moment, you simply showed up for what's already here? What if presence isn't something we need to earn or strive for, but something we can access simply by tuning into the rhythm that's been sustaining us all along? As we prepare to explore more of Kabat-Zinn's wisdom about mindfulness and presence, remember that your breath is always there, waiting patiently like a faithful friend, ready to guide you home to this moment whenever you're ready to return. Picture this. You're settling in with your favorite coffee, steam rising from the mug, and we're about to explore one of the most profound yet simple practices humans have ever discovered. Jon Kabat-Zinn invites us into what he calls the art of formal sitting meditation, and I promise you, this isn't about contorting yourself into a pretzel or emptying your mind of all thoughts. It's something far more practical and, dare I say, revolutionary for our modern lives. Kabat-Zinn begins this section with a beautiful paradox that immediately grabbed my attention. He suggests that sitting with yourself is both the most natural thing in the world and perhaps the most difficult thing you'll ever attempt. Think about it for a moment. When was the last time you truly sat with yourself without any distractions? No phone, no television, no book, no conversation, just you and whatever arises in your awareness. For most of us, that thought alone might trigger a slight panic. We've become so accustomed to constant stimulation that the idea of simply being present with ourselves feels almost foreign. The author paints a vivid picture of what formal sitting meditation actually looks like, and it's refreshingly ordinary. You find a quiet spot, sit comfortably with your back straight but not rigid, close your eyes or soften your gaze, and then simply pay attention to your breathing. That's it. No special equipment, no expensive courses, no mystical incantations. Just you, your breath, and whatever unfolds in the space of your awareness. Kabat-Zinn emphasizes that this isn't about achieving some special state of consciousness or becoming a different person. It's about becoming more intimate with who you already are. Now here's where it gets interesting. The moment you sit down and begin to pay attention to your breath, your mind will likely do what minds do best. It will wander. You might find yourself thinking about your grocery list, replaying a conversation from yesterday, or planning tomorrow's presentation. Kabat-Zinn shares that this isn't a failure of meditation. This is meditation. The practice isn't about stopping thoughts, but about noticing when your mind has wandered and gently, without judgment, bringing your attention back to your breath. It's like training a puppy, he suggests. You wouldn't scold a puppy for being playful. You'd simply redirect its attention with patience and kindness. The author shares a particularly striking analogy that really drives this point home. He compares our thoughts to clouds passing through the sky of our awareness. The sky doesn't fight the clouds or try to push them away. It simply allows them to pass through. Similarly, in sitting meditation, we learn to observe our thoughts and feelings without getting caught up in their drama. We become the sky, not the weather. This shift in perspective, Kabat-Zinn argues, is nothing short of transformational. But let's bring this into our 21st century reality. In our hyperconnected world, where notifications ping every few seconds and multitasking is considered a virtue, the simple act of sitting still becomes a radical act of rebellion. Kabat-Zinn suggests that formal sitting meditation is like going to the gym for your mind. Just as we wouldn't expect to run a marathon without training our bodies, we can't expect to navigate life's challenges with clarity and equanimity without training our minds. The beauty of this practice, as the author reveals through various examples, is how it begins to influence every aspect of your life. One story he shares involves a corporate executive who started with just 10 minutes of sitting meditation each morning. Within weeks, she noticed she was less reactive in meetings, more present with her children, and better able to handle stress. The formal practice of sitting became a foundation that supported her entire day. Kabat-Zinn also addresses the common misconception that meditation is about relaxation. While relaxation might be a pleasant side effect, the real purpose is developing what he calls relaxed alertness. It's about cultivating a quality of attention that's both calm and sharply aware. Think of it like being a wildlife photographer waiting for the perfect shot. You're completely relaxed yet utterly alert, ready to respond to whatever emerges. The chapter concludes with a gentle reminder that sitting meditation is called a practice for a reason. You don't master it and then move on. You keep returning to it, day after day, discovering new layers and depths. Each time you sit, you're not trying to recreate yesterday's experience or achieve tomorrow's enlightenment. You're simply showing up to this moment, whatever it contains. As we wrap up this exploration of sitting with yourself, Consider this. In a world that's constantly telling us to do more, be more, achieve more, perhaps the most radical thing we can do is simply be. The formal practice of sitting meditation offers us a daily opportunity to remember who we are beneath all the roles we play and stories we tell ourselves. It's an invitation to come home to ourselves, one breath at a time. Picture this. You're rushing through the grocery store, mind racing with your to-do list, barely noticing where you're going, when suddenly you realize you've walked past the milk section 3 times. Sound familiar? We've all been there, haven't we? Our bodies moving through space while our minds are somewhere else entirely. But what if I told you that this simple act of walking, something so automatic we rarely think about it, could become one of your most powerful tools for cultivating mindfulness and presence? Jon Kabat-Zinn opens this chapter with a revelation that might surprise you. Walking meditation isn't about sitting cross-legged on a cushion or finding some mystical mountaintop. It's about transforming the most ordinary activity we do every single day into a gateway to awareness. Think about it for a moment. How many steps do you take in a day? Thousands. And yet, how many of those steps are you actually present for? The beauty of walking meditation lies in its accessibility. You don't need special equipment, a quiet room, or even much time. You simply need the willingness to pay attention to what's already happening. Kabat-Zinn describes it as meditation in motion, where each step becomes an opportunity to connect with the present moment rather than letting your mind wander into yesterday's regrets or tomorrow's anxieties. Now here's where it gets interesting. Traditional walking meditation, as practiced in Buddhist monasteries, involves incredibly slow, deliberate steps. We're talking about movements so gradual that lifting your foot and placing it down again might take 30 seconds or more. Can you imagine? In our fast-paced world, this kind of intentional slowness feels almost revolutionary, but there's profound wisdom in this approach. When you slow down your walking to this degree, you begin to notice things that usually escape your attention entirely. You start to feel the weight shifting from one foot to the other, the way your muscles engage and release, the sensation of your foot making contact with the ground. You become aware of balance, something so fundamental to walking that we take it completely for granted. Think about this. Every single step requires a moment of controlled falling and catching yourself. Your body performs this miracle of balance thousands of times a day without your conscious involvement. Walking meditation invites you to witness this marvel. But Kabat-Zinn doesn't stop there. He makes a crucial point that extends far beyond formal meditation practice. The real magic happens when you bring this quality of attention to your regular, everyday walking. Whether you're walking from your car to the office, strolling through your neighborhood, or even pacing around your kitchen while dinner cooks, each moment offers an opportunity for mindfulness. Consider how different your daily experience could be if you approached walking with even a fraction of this awareness. Instead of those mindless rushes through parking lots, scrolling your phone while walking, or mentally rehearsing conversations, you could use these moments as mini meditations throughout your day. The ancient practice suddenly becomes incredibly modern and practical. Here's a story that illustrates this beautifully. Kabat-Zinn describes watching people in airports, those temples of modern anxiety and rush. Everyone's hurrying, stressed, minds scattered across time zones and obligations. But occasionally, you might notice someone moving differently, walking with a quality of presence and calm that seems to create a bubble of peace around them. They're not necessarily walking slowly, but they're walking consciously. They've discovered what walking meditation can offer, transforming even the chaos of travel into an opportunity for mindfulness. The practice extends naturally into other daily activities too. Think about washing dishes, for instance. How often do you rush through this chore, mind elsewhere, just trying to get it done? But what if you approached it the same way you might approach walking meditation? Feeling the warm water, noticing the texture of the soap, being present with the simple act of cleaning. Suddenly, washing dishes becomes less of a burden, and more of a brief retreat from the mental chatter. This is the genius of what Kabat-Zinn is teaching us. Mindfulness doesn't require us to add more activities to our already packed schedules. Instead, it invites us to transform the activities we're already doing. Every moment of movement becomes a potential meditation hall. Every step becomes a teacher. The ripple effects of this practice extend far beyond the walking itself. When you begin to move through the world with greater awareness, you start to notice things you've been missing. The way light filters through leaves, the sound of your footsteps on different surfaces, the subtle changes in your energy throughout the day. You become more attuned to your body's signals, more present with the people around you, more connected to the world you're moving through. As we transition to exploring these ideas further, remember that walking meditation isn't about perfection or achieving some special state. It's about returning, again and again, to the simple miracle of being present with what is. Each step offers a fresh opportunity to wake up to the richness of this moment, right here, right now. Picture this. You've just settled down for your meditation practice. Maybe you've lit a candle, found your comfortable spot, and closed your eyes with the best of intentions. But within minutes, your mind is like a restless child on a long car ride, constantly asking, "Are we there yet?" Your body feels fidgety, your thoughts are bouncing around like ping-pong balls, and suddenly you're wondering if you remembered to lock the front door. Sound familiar? This is exactly what Jon Kabat-Zinn addresses when he talks about the inevitable barriers we encounter in meditation. And honestly, it's some of the most reassuring wisdom you'll ever hear about this practice. Let's start with restlessness, because if you've ever tried to sit still for more than 5 minutes, you know this beast intimately. Kabat-Zinn describes restlessness as that inner agitation that makes you feel like you need to be anywhere but where you are, doing anything but what you're doing. It's like having an internal engine that's constantly revving, and the harder you try to calm it down, the louder it seems to get. Now, think about this for a moment. In our hyperconnected world, where we're constantly stimulated by notifications, emails, and endless streams of information, is it any wonder that sitting quietly feels almost impossible at first? The beautiful insight Kabat-Zinn offers is that restlessness isn't your enemy, it's actually information. It's your mind and body's way of showing you just how much you've been running on autopilot, how accustomed you've become to constant motion and stimulation. Instead of fighting it, he suggests we get curious about it. What does restlessness actually feel like in your body? Is it a buzzing sensation, a tightness in your chest, a feeling like electricity running through your limbs? When you start to observe restlessness with the same gentle attention you'd give to watching clouds pass overhead, something magical happens. It begins to settle on its own. Then there's boredom, which might be even more challenging for our modern minds than restlessness. We live in an era where boredom has become almost extinct, hasn't it? The moment we feel even a hint of mental emptiness, we reach for our phones, turn on the TV, or find some other way to fill the space. But Kabat-Zinn suggests that boredom in meditation is actually a doorway to something profound. He describes it as the mind's habitual need for entertainment, meeting the vast spaciousness of present moment awareness. Here's where it gets interesting. What we often label as boredom might actually be our first taste of inner stillness, and our restless mind simply doesn't know what to make of it. It's like someone who's lived their entire life in a bustling city suddenly finding themselves in a quiet forest. The silence can feel overwhelming at first, even uncomfortable. But if you can sit with that apparent boredom, if you can resist the urge to immediately stimulate yourself, you might discover what Kabat-Zinn calls the extraordinary ordinariness of simply being alive and aware. Fear is perhaps the most challenging barrier of all, and Kabat-Zinn approaches it with remarkable compassion. Sometimes in meditation, when the mental chatter finally quiets down, we come face to face with fears we've been unconsciously avoiding. Maybe it's the fear of death, of failure, of being alone with our thoughts, or of discovering something about ourselves we'd rather not see. It's like cleaning out a closet you haven't opened in years. You never know what you're going to find in there. The wisdom here is profound. Fear in meditation isn't a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's often a sign that you're doing something very right. You're finally creating enough inner space to encounter what's actually been there all along. Kabat-Zinn reminds us that these fears have been running the show from behind the scenes, influencing our decisions and behaviors in ways we might not even realize. By meeting them with mindful awareness, by neither pushing them away nor getting lost in them, we begin to see that they're just mental events, like weather patterns in the sky of consciousness. Resistance might be the most universal barrier of all. It's that voice that says, "This is stupid," or "I don't have time for this," or "I'm not the meditation type." Kabat-Zinn points out that resistance often shows up strongest right when we're on the verge of a breakthrough, like the mind's last-ditch effort to maintain the status quo. He suggests we treat resistance like an old friend who's just trying to protect us, even if their methods are outdated. The key to working with all these barriers is what Kabat-Zinn calls friendly awareness. Instead of seeing restlessness, boredom, fear, and resistance as problems to be solved, we learn to see them as teachers, as natural parts of the human experience that deserve our attention and compassion. It's this shift in perspective that transforms meditation from a battle against our minds into a gentle befriending of whatever arises in our experience. Picture this. You're sitting with a wise friend over coffee, and they're about to share 7 life-changing principles that could transform how you experience every single day. That's exactly what Jon Kabat-Zinn offers us in this profound section on the attitudinal foundations of mindfulness. These aren't just abstract concepts floating in some meditation hall somewhere. These are practical, deeply human attitudes that can shift your entire relationship with life itself. Let's start with the first foundation, non-judging. Now think about this for a moment. How often do you catch your mind playing judge and jury throughout the day? You wake up and immediately judge whether you got enough sleep. You look in the mirror and judge your appearance. You check your phone and judge the news, your messages, even other people's social media posts. Kabat-Zinn suggests that this constant inner commentary is like having a radio station playing in your head that never takes a commercial break. The practice of non-judging isn't about becoming passive or losing your ability to discern. It's about recognizing when your mind has slipped into autopilot judgment mode and gently stepping back to simply observe what's happening without immediately labeling it as good or bad. Imagine you're stuck in traffic. Your judging mind might immediately launch into a story about how this always happens to you, how terrible the city planning is, how this will ruin your entire day. But what if you could simply notice the experience of sitting in your car, feeling the frustration arise without feeding it with more judgment? This is the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable, but the suffering we add through our judgments is often optional. The second foundation, patience, might seem obvious at first glance, but Kabat-Zinn reveals its deeper wisdom. In our instant-everything culture, patience has become almost revolutionary. We expect our phones to load in milliseconds, our food to be ready immediately, even our personal growth to happen overnight. But patience in mindfulness isn't just about waiting. It's about understanding that each moment has its own timeline, its own natural unfolding. Think of a gardener who plants seeds and then tends to them daily without constantly digging them up to check if they're growing. That gardener understands that growth happens in its own time, and our job is simply to create the right conditions and trust the process. Beginner's mind, the third foundation, is perhaps one of the most delightful concepts Kabat-Zinn explores. Remember the last time you watched a child discover something new, maybe seeing snow for the first time or tasting ice cream. Their eyes widen with wonder, completely present to the experience without the filter of past knowledge or future expectations. We adults tend to approach life with what Zen teacher Suzuki Roshi called expert mind. We think we know what this traffic jam will be like, what this conversation will bring, what this meal will taste like. But beginner's mind invites us to approach even familiar experiences with fresh eyes. What would happen if you ate your morning coffee as if you'd never tasted coffee before? What if you listened to your partner or friend as if hearing their voice for the first time? Trust, the fourth foundation, goes deeper than simply believing in others. Kabat-Zinn is talking about developing trust in your own experience, your own wisdom, your own capacity to navigate life. In a world full of experts telling us what to think, feel, and do, this kind of self-trust can feel radical. It means trusting that you can sit with difficult emotions without immediately needing to fix or escape them. It means trusting that your body knows how to breathe, your heart knows how to beat, and your deeper wisdom knows more than your anxious thoughts might suggest. Non-striving, the fifth foundation, challenges everything our achievement-oriented culture teaches us. This doesn't mean becoming lazy or giving up on goals. It means understanding the paradox that the more desperately we chase after peace, happiness, or success, the more elusive they become. It's like trying to catch your shadow. The harder you run after it, the faster it moves away from you. Non-striving is about doing what needs to be done without being attached to specific outcomes, like a surfer who paddles toward the wave, but then surrenders to its power rather than trying to control it. Acceptance, the sixth foundation, is perhaps the most misunderstood. People often think acceptance means becoming passive or giving up, but Kabat-Zinn shows us it's actually the opposite. True acceptance is seeing things clearly as they are right now, which paradoxically gives us the power to respond wisely rather than react blindly. If you're lost in a forest, you can't find your way out until you first accept where you actually are, not where you wish you were or where you think you should be. Finally, letting go completes these foundations by teaching us that holding on too tightly to anything pleasant or unpleasant experiences, thoughts, emotions, or outcomes creates suffering. Like trying to hold water in your cupped hands, the tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. These 7 attitudes work together like the legs of a sturdy table, each one supporting and strengthening the others. They're not rules to follow perfectly, but rather gentle invitations to approach life with more wisdom, compassion, and presence. As we move deeper into our exploration of mindful living, these foundations will serve as our compass, always pointing us back toward what matters most. Picture this: you're sitting in your favorite coffee shop, watching people walk by the window, and you catch yourself making instant judgments. That woman's outfit is too bright. That man walks too slowly. That couple is being too loud. Without even realizing it, your mind has become a running commentary machine, constantly evaluating, categorizing, and critiquing everything around you. Jon Kabat-Zinn calls this our judging mind, and it's one of the biggest obstacles to true mindful awareness. Now think about this for a moment. When was the last time you simply observed something without immediately having an opinion about it? It's surprisingly difficult, isn't it? Our minds are like over-enthusiastic critics at a movie premiere, ready to give thumbs up or thumbs down before the opening credits finish rolling. But what if we could learn to watch the movie of our lives without the constant commentary track? Kabat-Zinn introduces us to the concept of non-judging awareness, which he describes as one of the foundational attitudes of mindfulness. It's not about becoming passive or indifferent, but rather about learning to observe our experiences with what he calls beginner's mind. That fresh, curious perspective we might have when encountering something for the very first time. Here's where it gets really interesting. Our judging mind isn't necessarily wrong or bad. It's actually trying to help us navigate the world efficiently. When our ancestors heard rustling in the bushes, quick judgments about potential threats were literally life-saving. The problem is that, in our modern world, this same mechanism fires constantly, even when we're just trying to meditate or simply be present with our morning coffee. Kabat-Zinn shares a beautiful story about watching his thoughts during meditation. He noticed how his mind would immediately label each thought as good or bad, important or trivial, spiritual or mundane. It was like having a filing clerk in his head who couldn't resist organizing every single mental experience into neat categories. But then he had a profound realization. What if he could observe these thoughts without the filing clerk? What if he could simply notice them arising and passing away, like clouds drifting across the sky? This is where the practice gets both simple and challenging. Simple because all you're doing is noticing, no special techniques required. Challenging because our judging mind has had decades of practice and doesn't give up easily. It's like trying to watch a movie while sitting next to someone who insists on explaining every plot point and predicting what happens next. Let me give you a modern example that might resonate. Think about scrolling through social media. Your judging mind is in overdrive. This post is boring. That person is showing off. This news story is depressing. That meme is hilarious. But what would happen if you scrolled with non-judging awareness? You might notice the colors, the emotions that arise, the physical sensation of scrolling, the urge to react or comment, all without immediately categorizing these experiences as good or bad. Kabat-Zinn emphasizes that non-judging doesn't mean we become doormats or lose our ability to discern. We can still recognize that some situations require action or that certain behaviors are harmful. The difference is that we're responding from a place of clarity rather than reacting from automatic judgments. It's like the difference between a skilled chef tasting a dish to understand its flavors versus someone wolfing down food while simultaneously critiquing every bite. One of the most powerful aspects of this practice is how it affects our relationship with ourselves. We're often our own harshest critics, constantly judging our performance, appearance, thoughts, and emotions. Non-judging awareness offers us a way to observe our inner experience with the same gentle curiosity we might have when watching a child play or a bird build its nest. Here's a practical way to explore this. The next time you're walking, try simply noticing what you see, hear, and feel without the mental commentary. Notice how your judging mind wants to label everything. That building is ugly, this street is noisy, those flowers are pretty. See if you can catch these judgments arising and simply acknowledge them with a gentle thinking, then return to pure observation. The beauty of non-judging awareness is that it opens up space in our minds and hearts. Instead of being caught in the narrow tunnel of our opinions and evaluations, we discover a vast sky of awareness where all experiences can simply be what they are. This doesn't make us passive observers of life, but rather more skillful participants who can respond to situations with wisdom rather than react from habit. As we continue exploring Kabat-Zinn's teachings, we'll discover how this foundation of non-judging awareness supports all the other attitudes of mindfulness, creating a rich soil where genuine presence can take root and flourish. Welcome back to another cozy conversation about mindfulness and the art of living well. I'm settling in with my favorite mug today, and I hope you've got yours too, because we're diving into something that might just change how you approach every challenging moment in your life. Today we're exploring one of Jon Kabat-Zinn's most profound insights from Wherever You Go, There You Are, the paradoxical relationship between patience, letting go, and the peace we're all desperately seeking. Picture this scene for a moment. You're sitting in your car, drumming your fingers on the steering wheel, watching the traffic light that seems to have been red for an eternity. Your jaw is clenched, your shoulders are tight, and you're mentally rehearsing the speech you'll give your boss about why you're late. Sound familiar? Now, here's the fascinating thing Kabat-Zinn points out. In that very moment of forcing, pushing, and demanding that reality be different, we're actually moving further away from the peace and clarity we need most. Think about this for a second. When was the last time you got exactly what you wanted by gripping it so tightly that your knuckles turned white? Kabat-Zinn shares this beautiful observation that our culture has trained us to believe that wanting something badly enough, pushing hard enough, will somehow bend the universe to our will. But here's what he's discovered through decades of meditation practice and working with thousands of people. This approach is like trying to catch a butterfly by chasing it with a net. The harder you run, the more elusive it becomes. Let me share one of the most striking examples from this section. Kabat-Zinn tells the story of a woman in his meditation program who came to class week after week, increasingly frustrated because she wasn't experiencing the profound calm she'd read about in meditation books. She would sit there during practice, eyes squeezed shut, practically vibrating with effort, trying to force her mind into stillness. Sound like anyone you know, maybe someone you see in the mirror each morning. The breakthrough came when she finally understood what Kabat-Zinn calls the patience paradox. True patience isn't gritting your teeth and enduring something you hate. Real patience is a form of wisdom. It's recognizing that this moment, exactly as it is, contains everything you need. It's not passive resignation, it's active acceptance. When she stopped trying to meditate and simply allowed herself to be present with whatever was arising, the frustration, the restless thoughts, even the sounds of traffic outside, something remarkable happened. The very peace she'd been chasing suddenly appeared, not because she'd conquered her mind, but because she'd stopped fighting it. Now you might be thinking, that's all well and good for meditation cushions, but what about real life? Here's where Kabat-Zinn's insights get really practical. Consider your relationship with technology, for instance. How many times have you felt that surge of impatience when your internet is slow, when your phone takes 3 seconds instead of 1 to load an app? In those micro moments of impatience, we're essentially declaring war on reality. We're saying, this moment is not acceptable. Things should be different. But what if instead we could meet that 3-second delay with curiosity rather than irritation? What if we could use it as a tiny meditation bell, reminding us to breathe? The letting go piece is equally revolutionary. Kabat-Zinn explains that letting go doesn't mean becoming passive or giving up on your dreams. It means releasing your death grip on how and when things should unfold. Think of it like holding a bird grip too tightly and you'll crush it. Hold too loosely and it might fly away, but hold it with just the right touch and you can feel its heartbeat, its aliveness, its essential nature. I love how he applies this to parenting. So many parents exhaust themselves trying to control every variable in their child's life, orchestrating perfect outcomes, hovering and managing and worrying. But the children who thrive often have parents who have learned this delicate art of holding lightly, being present and engaged while allowing their kids the space to make mistakes, to learn, to become who they're meant to be rather than who their parents think they should be. Here's what's particularly beautiful about this approach. When we stop forcing outcomes, we often discover that what unfolds naturally is far more interesting, more creative, more perfectly suited to our actual needs than anything we could have orchestrated. It's like the difference between a perfectly manicured garden and a wildflower meadow. Both have their beauty, but there's something alive and surprising about the meadow that no amount of planning can create. As we wrap up today's exploration, I invite you to carry this question with you. Where in your life are you gripping so tightly that you're squeezing the joy right out of the experience? Tomorrow, we'll continue our journey together, but for now, perhaps just notice, with patience and gentle curiosity, what wants to unfold when you finally let it. Picture yourself sitting by a still lake at dawn, watching the mist rise from the water's surface. You're not trying to make the mist appear or disappear faster. You're simply witnessing this natural unfolding. This image captures something profound that Jon Kabat-Zinn explores in his discussion of trust and non-striving, two foundational attitudes that can transform how we approach both meditation and life itself. Now, think about this for a moment. When was the last time you truly trusted your own inner wisdom? In our achievement-obsessed culture, we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us we need to do more, be more, strive harder. We've become so accustomed to pushing and forcing our way through life that the idea of non-striving might sound almost foreign, maybe even lazy. But Kabat-Zinn reveals something counterintuitive here. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is absolutely nothing at all. Trust, in the context of mindfulness, isn't about blind faith or wishful thinking. It's about developing confidence in your own basic wisdom and goodness. Imagine you're learning to ride a bicycle for the first time as an adult. Your instinct might be to grip the handlebars tighter, to overthink every movement, to force yourself to balance. But experienced cyclists know that the magic happens when you relax into the process, when you trust your body's natural ability to find equilibrium. The same principle applies to meditation and mindful living. Kabat-Zinn often shares the story of how we instinctively know things about ourselves that no external authority can teach us. Think about how you know when you're truly hungry versus when you're eating out of boredom. Consider how you can sense when someone is being genuine with you or putting on an act. These aren't skills you learned in school, they're expressions of your innate wisdom, your body's intelligence, your heart's knowing. Trust means honoring these inner signals rather than constantly second-guessing yourself or looking outside for validation. But here's where it gets really interesting. Trust works hand in hand with non-striving. Non-striving doesn't mean being passive or giving up on your goals and dreams. Instead, it's about releasing the desperate, grasping quality that often accompanies our efforts. Picture a master gardener tending to their plants. They water, they fertilize, they provide optimal conditions, but they don't stand there pulling on the stems trying to make the flowers grow faster. They understand that growth has its own timeline, its own intelligence. In our hyper-connected world, this wisdom feels almost revolutionary. We're used to instant everything, instant messages, instant results, instant gratification. But meaningful change, whether in meditation practice or personal growth, operates on a different timeline entirely. When you sit in meditation with a striving mind, constantly checking your progress, wondering if you're doing it right, analyzing every sensation and thought, you're like that person yanking on the flower stems. The very effort to force calmness creates tension. Consider Sarah, a busy executive who started meditating because she heard it would make her more productive and focused at work. For months, she approached her practice like another project to master. She timed herself, rated her sessions, felt frustrated when her mind wandered, and kept waiting for some dramatic breakthrough. It wasn't until she learned to simply show up without agenda, trusting that the practice itself was enough, that she began to experience the profound shifts she'd been seeking. The irony: once she stopped trying so hard to get somewhere, she arrived exactly where she needed to be. Non-striving also applies beautifully to how we handle difficult emotions and challenging life circumstances. When anxiety arises, our first instinct is often to fight it, to make it go away as quickly as possible. But what if, instead, we could trust that even anxiety has something to teach us? What if we could meet it with curiosity rather than resistance? This doesn't mean we enjoy suffering or seek it out, but rather that we stop adding the extra layer of suffering that comes from fighting what's already present. The practice becomes a dance between effort and ease, between caring and letting go. You care enough to show up, to maintain your practice, to pay attention, but you hold it all lightly. It's like holding a butterfly grip too tightly and you'll crush it. Hold too loosely and it flies away. The middle way requires both engagement and surrender. This ancient wisdom feels particularly relevant as we navigate uncertainty in our modern world. Whether we're dealing with career transitions, relationship challenges, or global upheavals, trust and non-striving offer us a different way of being with difficulty. Instead of constantly trying to control outcomes, we can learn to trust the process, to plant seeds with care and then allow life to unfold in its own mysterious way. As we'll discover in our next exploration, this foundation of trust and non-striving naturally leads us toward one of meditation's most transformative qualities, the cultivation of patience, which teaches us that everything has its season, and that season is always perfect, even when it doesn't feel that way. Picture this: you're sitting in your favorite coffee shop, watching a toddler try to tie their shoes for what must be the 100th time. Their face is scrunched up in concentration, tongue poking out slightly, completely absorbed in this monumental task. They're not frustrated by their previous 99 attempts. They're not comparing themselves to the adult at the next table who can tie shoes with their eyes closed. They're simply here now, fully present with this moment and this challenge. This, my friend, is what Jon Kabat-Zinn calls beginner's mind, and it might just be one of the most revolutionary concepts you'll encounter in mindfulness practice. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is just another feel-good philosophy, let me ask you something. When was the last time you approached anything in your life with that same fresh curiosity? When did you last look at your morning commute, your relationship, or even your own reflection in the mirror without the heavy baggage of all your previous experiences weighing down your perception? Kabat-Zinn draws this concept from Zen Buddhism, where they call it shashin. But don't worry, you don't need to sit cross-legged on a mountaintop to understand it. Think of beginner's mind as intellectual humility meets childlike wonder. It's the art of approaching each moment as if you're encountering it for the very first time, even when you've lived through similar moments thousands of times before. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Beginner's mind isn't just about being open and curious. It's intimately connected to another crucial concept that Kabat-Zinn explores: acceptance. And no, acceptance doesn't mean becoming a doormat or giving up on change. Think about it this way. Have you ever noticed how the more you fight against traffic during your commute, the more stressed and miserable you become? The traffic doesn't care about your resistance. It simply is what it is. Acceptance is like finally turning off that internal radio station that's constantly broadcasting complaints about reality, and instead tuning into what's actually happening right now. Kabat-Zinn tells the story of a meditation student who came to him frustrated because, after months of practice, she still felt anxious during meditation. She was fighting her anxiety, trying to push it away, getting angry at herself for not being good at meditation. Sound familiar? We all do this. We meditate to feel peaceful, and then we get upset when we don't feel peaceful, which makes us even less peaceful. It's like trying to smooth out water by hitting it with your hand. The breakthrough came when this student learned to approach her anxiety with beginner's mind. Instead of, "Oh no, here's that terrible anxiety again," she began to investigate it with genuine curiosity. What does anxiety actually feel like in my body right now? How does it change from moment to moment? What happens if I neither push it away nor invite it to stay, but simply observe it like a scientist studying a fascinating phenomenon? This is where acceptance and beginner's mind dance together beautifully. Acceptance gives us the courage to stop fighting what's already here, while beginner's mind gives us the curiosity to explore it freshly. It's like the difference between being trapped in a room you hate versus being an explorer discovering a new territory. Let me give you a modern example that might hit close to home. Think about social media. Most of us approach our phones and social feeds with years of accumulated habits, judgments, and automatic reactions. We scroll mindlessly, compare ourselves to others, feel that familiar ping of inadequacy or anger. But what if you approached your phone with beginner's mind? What if you picked it up and thought, "Interesting, what is this device actually doing to my nervous system right now? What emotions are arising as I look at these images? What thoughts are appearing?" This isn't about becoming a detached robot. It's about becoming genuinely interested in your own experience instead of being hijacked by it. When you combine acceptance with beginner's mind, something magical happens. You stop being the victim of your circumstances and become the curious observer of your life. Kabat-Zinn emphasizes that this isn't a one-time achievement but a moment-to-moment practice. Every breath is an opportunity to start fresh. Every conversation, every meal, every mundane task becomes a chance to approach life with what he beautifully calls "don't know mind." This doesn't mean becoming ignorant or naive. It means holding your knowledge lightly, staying open to surprise, maintaining what researchers now call intellectual humility. The beautiful paradox is that the more we accept what is, the more space we create for genuine change. And the more we approach our lives with beginner's mind, the richer and more vivid our experiences become. As we'll discover in our next exploration, this foundation of acceptance and fresh perspective becomes the soil in which deeper mindfulness practices can truly flourish. You know, there's something almost magical about that moment when you first wake up in the morning. Your alarm hasn't gone off yet, and for just a few seconds, you're suspended between sleep and consciousness. Now, think about this. What if I told you that this gentle awareness you experience in those precious moments could actually be woven throughout your entire day? That's exactly what Kabat-Zinn invites us to explore in this transformative section about bringing mindfulness into our daily lives. Picture this. You're rushing through your morning routine, grabbing coffee, checking emails, already mentally rehearsing your first meeting while you're still brushing your teeth. Sound familiar? Most of us live our days on autopilot, moving from one task to the next without really being present for any of them. But here's where things get interesting. Kabat-Zinn suggests that every single moment of our ordinary day is actually an opportunity for awakening, for genuine presence. It's not about adding another item to your already overwhelming to-do list. Instead, it's about transforming the quality of attention you bring to what you're already doing. Let's start with work, since most of us spend a significant portion of our waking hours there. Kabat-Zinn shares a story about a woman who worked in a high-pressure corporate environment. She was constantly stressed, always feeling like she was behind, never quite catching up. Then she began practicing what he calls stealth meditation. She would take 3 conscious breaths before opening each email, pause mindfully before entering meetings, even eat her lunch with full attention rather than scrolling through her phone. The remarkable thing wasn't that her workload decreased, but that her relationship to the work completely shifted. She found herself more creative, more resilient, and paradoxically, more productive. Now you might be thinking, that sounds nice in theory, but you don't know my boss. Here's the beautiful thing about mindfulness in daily life. It's completely internal. No one needs to know you're practicing it. When you're in that difficult conversation with a colleague, instead of getting caught up in your internal commentary about how unreasonable they're being, you can notice your breath, feel your feet on the ground, and respond from a place of clarity rather than reactivity. It's like having a secret superpower that no one can take away from you. Relationships present another fascinating arena for mindful living. Kabat-Zinn talks about mindful listening, which is radically different from our usual way of engaging in conversation. Think about the last time someone was telling you something important. Were you really there with them, or were you already formulating your response, thinking about what you wanted to say next? Mindful listening means offering your complete presence to another person. It means noticing when your mind wanders to your own agenda and gently bringing it back to what's actually being shared with you. He tells a touching story about a man who decided to practice mindful presence with his teenage daughter. Instead of their usual pattern of quick exchanges about homework and chores, he began really seeing her, listening to not just her words but the feelings underneath them. Their relationship transformed. She began opening up about things she'd never shared before. The father realized he'd been physically present for years, but emotionally absent, always thinking about the next thing he needed to do rather than truly connecting with this young person he loved so much. Even the most mundane activities become doorways to presence when approached mindfully. Washing dishes, for instance, doesn't have to be just another chore to get through as quickly as possible. Kabat-Zinn describes the simple act of feeling the warm water on your hands, noticing the soap bubbles, being present for the circular motions of cleaning. Suddenly, washing dishes becomes a form of meditation, a moment of peace in your day rather than an interruption to it. Here's something that might surprise you. Mindfulness in daily life isn't about being calm and serene all the time. It's about being awake to whatever is actually happening, including difficult emotions, challenging situations, and moments of frustration. When you're stuck in traffic, instead of fighting reality by getting angry about something you can't control, you can practice what Kabat-Zinn calls mindful waiting. You notice the tension in your shoulders, take a few conscious breaths, maybe even appreciate having a few unexpected moments to simply be still. The profound insight here is that we don't need to wait for perfect conditions to live mindfully. We don't need to retreat to a monastery or wait until we have more time. Every moment of our ordinary, messy, beautiful lives is already perfect for practicing presence. The question isn't whether we have time for mindfulness. It's whether we're willing to show up fully for the life we're already living. As we continue exploring these practices, remember that mindfulness in daily life is less about doing something additional and more about doing everything you already do with greater awareness and presence. You know, there's this beautiful moment in the classic film, Zorba the Greek, where Zorba uses the phrase, the full catastrophe, to describe life itself. Not just the disasters or tragedies, mind you, but everything, the whole messy, magnificent, overwhelming experience of being human. Jon Kabat-Zinn borrows this phrase because it captures something profound about our relationship with stress and difficulty. We spend so much energy trying to avoid life's inevitable challenges, but what if the secret isn't in the avoiding at all? Picture this. You're rushing to an important meeting, coffee in hand, when suddenly you spill it all over your white shirt. Your immediate reaction might be frustration, maybe even panic. But here's what's fascinating: the actual event, the coffee hitting your shirt, lasts maybe 2 seconds. The stress you experience, that can last for hours, sometimes days, as you replay the moment, worry about what people thought, or berate yourself for being clumsy. This is what Kabat-Zinn calls our stress about stress. We take an inevitable moment of life's full catastrophe and amplify it exponentially through our mental reactions. Now think about this for a moment. How much of your daily stress actually comes from events themselves versus your thoughts about those events? When we really examine it, we discover something remarkable. Much of our suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from our resistance to what happens to us. It's like being caught in a riptide at the beach. The more you fight against it, the more exhausted and panicked you become. But experienced swimmers know the secret. You don't fight the current, you work with it, swimming parallel to the shore until you find your way out. Mindfulness offers us this same kind of wisdom for life's emotional riptides. Instead of immediately jumping into our habitual patterns of worry, anger, or despair when challenges arise, we can learn to pause and observe what's actually happening in this moment. Kabat-Zinn shares the story of a woman in his stress reduction clinic who was dealing with chronic pain. For years, she had been fighting her condition, becoming increasingly bitter and isolated. Through mindfulness practice, she began to notice something unexpected. While her physical pain remained, her suffering around the pain started to shift. She discovered that pain and suffering, while often traveling together, are actually two different experiences. This distinction is absolutely crucial for modern life. We live in a culture that promises us we can eliminate discomfort if we just buy the right products, follow the right plan, or think the right thoughts. But life has other plans. Your job might become stressful, relationships will have their difficult moments, your body will age, people you love will face their own struggles. This isn't a bug in the system of life, it's a feature. The full catastrophe includes both the roses and the thorns, and mindfulness teaches us how to hold both with equal presence. Consider how we typically handle a difficult emotion like anxiety. The moment we feel that familiar tightness in our chest or racing of thoughts, we often immediately try to fix it, distract ourselves from it, or analyze why we're feeling this way. But what if instead we could meet that anxiety with curiosity rather than resistance? What if we could say, "Oh, hello anxiety, I see you're here. What do you feel like in my body right now?" This isn't about becoming passive or resigned. It's about developing what Kabat-Zinn calls relaxed awareness in the face of difficulty. There's a beautiful metaphor he uses about learning to surf. A beginning surfer spends most of their time being tumbled by waves, fighting against the ocean's power. But an experienced surfer learns to read the waves, to move with their energy, even to find joy in their unpredictability. Mindfulness teaches us to surf the waves of our own experience, the challenging emotions, the unexpected setbacks, the daily frustrations that make up our personal full catastrophe. This approach doesn't mean we become doormats or stop working to improve difficult situations. Instead, we develop what psychologists call response flexibility, the ability to choose our response rather than simply react from our conditioned patterns. When your teenager slams their bedroom door, when your boss sends that passive-aggressive email, when you're stuck in traffic and running late, these moments become opportunities to practice presence rather than just sources of stress. The profound shift happens when we realize that our capacity to be present with difficulty is actually a form of strength, not weakness. We begin to trust that we can handle whatever arises, not because life will suddenly become easy, but because we're developing the inner resources to meet each moment with awareness and compassion. This is the real gift of embracing the full catastrophe. We stop waiting for life to be different and start living the life we actually have, with all its beautiful, messy, completely human complexity. Picture this. You're sitting in a doctor's waiting room, that familiar knot of anxiety tightening in your stomach as you wait for test results. Your mind is racing through worst-case scenarios, your body tense with anticipation. Now, what if I told you that this very moment of suffering could become a doorway to profound healing? Not necessarily the kind of healing you might expect, but something deeper, more transformative. This is exactly what Jon Kabat-Zinn explores in one of the most powerful sections of Wherever You Go, There You Are, where he reveals how mindfulness can completely transform our relationship with illness and suffering. Kabat-Zinn begins with a startling proposition that challenges everything we typically think about healing. He suggests that true healing isn't always about getting better in the way we imagine it. Sometimes, he explains, healing means becoming whole, even in the presence of illness or pain. Think about that for a moment. What does it mean to be whole while still being sick? It's like discovering that a cracked vase can still hold water beautifully, that its imperfections don't diminish its essential purpose. The author shares the story of a patient in his stress reduction clinic, a woman with chronic pain who had been suffering for years. She had tried every treatment imaginable, consulted countless specialists, and yet the pain persisted. Through mindfulness practice, something remarkable happened. The pain didn't disappear, but her relationship to it transformed entirely. Instead of fighting the pain, resisting it, or letting it define her entire existence, she learned to observe it with curiosity and compassion. She discovered that she was not her pain, that there was a vast awareness within her that remained untouched by suffering. This insight cuts to the heart of what Kabat-Zinn calls the difference between pain and suffering. Pain, he explains, is often unavoidable. It's part of the human condition. Whether it's physical discomfort, emotional distress, or the inevitable losses that come with being alive, pain visits us all. But suffering, that's different. Suffering is what happens when we resist pain, when we create elaborate stories around it, when we let it consume our identity. It's like the difference between being caught in rain and standing in that rain while cursing the sky, demanding it stop, and making yourself miserable with resistance. Now, think about this in your own life. How often do you find yourself not just experiencing difficulty, but adding layers of mental anguish on top of it? Maybe you're dealing with a health scare, and suddenly you're not just concerned about the medical issue itself, but you're catastrophizing about the future, beating yourself up for past lifestyle choices, or spiraling into anxiety about things completely beyond your control. Kabat-Zinn shows us how mindfulness can help us distinguish between the actual experience and all the extra suffering we pile on top. He introduces the concept of being with rather than fixing. In our culture, we're conditioned to see illness as a problem to be solved, an enemy to be defeated. We wage war on cancer, we battle depression, we fight chronic conditions. But what if, instead of approaching illness as warfare, we learn to approach it as a teacher? What if we could sit with our discomfort the way we might sit with a difficult friend who needs our presence more than our advice? The author shares another powerful example from his clinical work, describing a man facing a terminal diagnosis who initially came to mindfulness practice hoping it would cure his disease. As his practice deepened, something unexpected happened. While his physical condition didn't improve, he experienced what he described as the most meaningful and connected months of his entire life. He became more present with his family, more appreciative of simple pleasures, more in touch with what truly mattered. In facing his mortality directly, without the usual layers of denial and distraction, he discovered an aliveness he had never known. This doesn't mean we should be passive in the face of illness or avoid seeking appropriate medical treatment. Kabat-Zinn is clear about this. Mindfulness isn't about magical thinking or replacing medical care with meditation. Instead, it's about bringing a different quality of attention to whatever we're experiencing. It's about showing up fully for our lives, even when those lives include pain, uncertainty, or loss. The transformation happens in the quality of our presence. When we stop running from difficult experiences and instead learn to breathe with them, to observe them with kindness, something shifts. We discover that we're much larger than our problems, that our essential nature remains whole even when our circumstances are challenging. It's like realizing that the sky remains vast and blue, even when storms pass through it. As we transition from this profound exploration of healing and wholeness, we carry with us a new understanding that wellness isn't just about the absence of problems, but about the presence of awareness, compassion, and acceptance in whatever arises. Jon Kabat-Zinn's "Wherever You Go, There You Are" isn't just about meditation, it's about fundamentally changing how you experience life itself. The book's central message is beautifully simple yet profound. Mindfulness isn't something you do, it's something you are. It's already within you, waiting to be uncovered beneath the layers of distraction, judgment, and endless mental chatter. Throughout these pages, Kabat-Zinn weaves together ancient wisdom with modern science, showing us that presence isn't a luxury, it's essential for truly living. He reminds us that we're often so busy rushing toward some imagined future happiness that we miss the only moment we actually have, this one. Here are the key takeaways that can transform your daily experience. First, start incredibly small with your mindfulness practice. Don't aim for hour-long meditation sessions. Begin with 3 conscious breaths when you wake up, or truly tasting your first sip of coffee. These micro moments of awareness create the foundation for deeper practice. The goal isn't perfection, it's showing up consistently to the present moment. Second, embrace beginner's mind in everything you do. Approach familiar experiences as if encountering them for the first time. That walk to work, that conversation with your partner, that mundane task, see them with fresh eyes. This attitude dissolves the autopilot mode that robs us of life's richness. Third, practice non-judgmental awareness throughout your day. When you notice your mind labeling experiences as good or bad, simply observe that judging is happening. This isn't about suppressing thoughts but developing a different relationship with them. You become the witness rather than being hijacked by every mental commentary. Fourth, use ordinary moments as meditation bells. Let red traffic lights remind you to breathe deeply. Use the sound of your phone ringing as a cue to pause and center yourself. Transform daily irritations into opportunities for mindful awareness. These informal practices are just as valuable as formal sitting meditation. Finally, be patient with yourself as you cultivate this new way of being. Mindfulness isn't about achieving some perfect state of calm. It's about meeting whatever arises with compassion and curiosity. Some days will feel more mindful than others, and that's perfectly human. The practice is in the returning, again and again, to presence. Before you go, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below with at least one idea from this book that stuck with you, one concept you're going to carry forward. It could be something that challenged your thinking, something you want to try, or even something you disagreed with. Your insight might be exactly what another listener needs to hear today. And if this summary gave you something valuable, A new perspective, a spark of motivation, or even just a peaceful hour with your coffee, share it with someone who might need it too. Subscribe to One Book, One Coffee, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a new summary. Every week we sit down together with one great book, one warm cup of coffee, and the simple belief that wisdom, shared well, can change lives. Until next time, keep reading, keep growing, and remember, every small step counts. See you at the next book.